I made a decision in 1987 that still haunts me, in a good way. I was 41 years old, watching the market crash 22% in a single day, and I had a choice: keep collecting my salary and playing it safe, or bet everything on what I believed about market cycles. I chose the latter. That choice eventually led to founding Oaktree Capital, but more importantly, it taught me something that took me 2 decades to fully understand. There's a fundamental difference between working for money and making money work for you. Now, at 78, I watch people in their 50s and 60s grinding away at jobs they don't love, chasing paychecks they don't need, missing the opportunity that's staring them right in the face. And I think they're making the same mistake I almost made. They're confusing activity with productivity, motion with progress, salary with wealth. Let me be clear about something. I'm not talking about retirement. I'm not suggesting you stop working. I'm suggesting something far more radical, that you stop trading your time for money and start trading your knowledge for income. There's a massive difference, and understanding that difference is worth millions. I've spent the last 5 decades building one of the world's largest alternative investment firms. We manage over $170 billion. Warren Buffett has said he reads my memos first when they arrive. But here's what most people don't know. The real wealth I've built didn't come from my salary. It came from understanding how capital compounds, how markets cycle, and how to position yourself to capture value without trading hours for dollars. If you're over 50, you have something more valuable than energy, more valuable than time, more valuable than connections. You have pattern recognition. You've lived through enough cycles to see what works. You've made enough mistakes to know what doesn't. And in 2025, that knowledge is worth more than it's ever been worth before. I want to show you how to monetize that knowledge. Not through some get-rich-quick scheme, not through risky speculation, but through the systematic application of principles I've used for half a century to generate consistent, sustainable income. The kind of income that doesn't require you to show up at an office. The kind that compounds while you sleep. The kind that gives you back the one thing you can never buy more of: time. Let me start with what I call the great mistake of the American worker. I see it everywhere. People spend their 20s and 30s building skills. They spend their 40s and 50s applying those skills. And then, right when they've accumulated the most valuable asset they'll ever own, decades of hard-won wisdom, they keep trading it at an hourly rate. They keep showing up, clocking in, taking orders from people half their age who have twice their energy but a fraction of their understanding. This is insane. It's like owning a gold mine and choosing to work in someone else's coal mine instead. I learned this lesson watching distressed debt markets in the early 1990s. Everyone was working harder, longer hours, more deals, more stress. But the people making real money weren't working harder. They were working differently. They'd built systems, created processes, established positions that generated returns whether they were in the office or not. They'd moved from linear income to exponential income, from trading time for money to deploying capital for returns. That's the shift I'm talking about. And if you're over 50, you're in the perfect position to make it. Here's why age is your advantage, not your liability. In my experience, the investment world obsesses over youth, energy, hustle, but they're confusing inputs with outputs. Yes, young people can work longer hours. They can pull all-nighters. They can chase deals with relentless energy. But they can't do the one thing that matters most. They can't distinguish between what looks good and what is good. They can't separate signal from noise. They can't recognize the pattern that's repeating because they've never seen it before. You have. You've watched markets rise and fall. You've seen technologies come and go. You've witnessed trends that seemed permanent vanish overnight. You've developed what I call second-level thinking, the ability to look past the obvious and see what's actually happening beneath the surface. And in 2025, with AI flooding markets with first-level analysis, that second-level thinking is worth a fortune. Let me give you a specific example. Right now, everyone is talking about artificial intelligence. The headlines scream about how AI will change everything. First-level thinkers see the obvious. AI is powerful, therefore AI companies will be valuable. They pile into NVIDIA and Microsoft and whatever's hot this week. Second-level thinkers ask different questions. If AI is democratizing intelligence, what becomes scarce? If everyone has access to the same tools, what creates differentiation? If machines can analyze data, what can humans do that machines can't? The answer is, humans can recognize context. Humans can apply judgment. Humans can synthesize experience across domains. And if you're over 50, you've accumulated more context, more judgment, and more cross-domain experience than any AI model ever will. That's your edge. and I'm going to show you how to monetize it. The model I'm proposing isn't complicated, but it requires a fundamental shift in how you think about income. Most people have one income stream, their salary. They trade 40, 50, 60 hours a week for a paycheck. The paycheck is capped by their hourly rate multiplied by available hours. This is linear income. It doesn't scale, it doesn't compound, and it stops the moment you stop working. What I'm suggesting is building multiple streams of non-linear income. Income that isn't tied to your hours. Income that compounds. Income that continues whether you're working or not. And the beautiful thing about being over 50 is that you already have the raw materials. You just need to restructure them. Let me walk you through the framework I've seen work repeatedly. I call it the knowledge capital model, and it's built on 3 pillars: expertise monetization, capital deployment, and system building. Each pillar can generate $15,000 to $20,000 monthly. Combined, they create $50,000 in monthly income without requiring you to trade your time linearly. Start with expertise monetization. You've spent 25, 30, maybe 35 years becoming excellent at something. Maybe it's marketing. Maybe it's operations. Maybe it's sales or finance or engineering. Whatever it is, you've accumulated knowledge that took decades to acquire. And here's what most people miss. That knowledge is more valuable as advice than as labor. Think about it this way. When I consult with companies, they don't pay me to do the work. They pay me to tell them what work to do. They pay me to help them avoid mistakes. They pay me to recognize patterns they can't see. That's expertise monetization. And in 2025, the market for it is enormous. I'm watching people in their 50s and 60s build 6-figure consulting practices in 90 days, not by working more hours, by packaging their knowledge differently. Instead of trading hours for dollars, they're creating leveraged advisory relationships. They're working with 5 clients at $5,000 per month instead of 1 employer at $8,000. Same hours, more income, more flexibility, more control. But here's the key. You can't just hang out a shingle and expect clients to appear. You need to demonstrate expertise in a way that's visible and valuable. This is where most people fail. They have the knowledge, but they hide it. They keep it locked in their heads instead of putting it into the market. I learned this from writing my memos. For 35 years, I've been sharing what I'm thinking, what I'm seeing, what I'm learning. Not to show off, not to prove I'm smart, but to demonstrate how I think. And that demonstration has been worth more than any advertisement I could have bought. People read my memos and they understand how I approach problems. They see my framework, they recognize the value, and they want to work with me. You need to do the same thing. Not by writing investment memos, unless that's your expertise, but by making your knowledge visible. Write articles, record videos, host webinars, teach what you know. Not for free forever, but to demonstrate competence, to show people how you think, to prove that you can solve problems they care about. I'm watching a former CFO in her 50s who spent 30 years in corporate finance. She started writing LinkedIn articles about cash flow management. Simple stuff, nothing fancy, just clear explanations of concepts she understood deeply. Within 6 months, she had companies reaching out asking for help. Now she advises 5 small businesses at $4,000 per month each. $20,000 monthly, 10 hours of work per week. She's making more than her old salary working a quarter of the hours. That's expertise monetization. You're not working harder, you're working differently. You're leveraging knowledge instead of time. Now let's talk about capital deployment. This is where most people get it wrong. They think investing means picking stocks or timing markets or finding the next big thing. That's not investing, that's speculation. Real investing is about deploying capital systematically to generate consistent, predictable returns. And if you're over 50, you should have capital to deploy. I'm not talking about millions. I'm talking about whatever you've accumulated. Maybe it's $100,000. Maybe it's $500,000. Maybe it's more. The amount matters less than the approach. Because the difference between 3% returns and 10% returns on $300,000 is $21,000 annually. That's $1,750 per month, just from deploying capital more intelligently. Here's what I've learned about capital deployment over 50 years. Consistency beats brilliance. You don't need to find the next Amazon. You don't need to predict the next crash. You need to build a portfolio that generates steady, reliable income regardless of market conditions. And in 2025, the opportunities to do this are better than they've been in a decade. I'm looking at dividend-paying stocks yielding 4 to 6%. I'm looking at investment-grade corporate bonds yielding 5 to 7%. I'm looking at real estate investment trusts distributing 6 to 8%. I'm looking at private credit opportunities yielding 9 to 12%. None of these are exciting. None of them will make you rich overnight. But combined intelligently, they can generate $2,000 to $3,000 monthly per $100,000 deployed. Let me give you a specific example. A balanced portfolio of $300,000 allocated across dividend aristocrats, short duration bonds, and select REITs can generate $18,000 to $24,000 annually with moderate risk. That's $1,500 to $2,000 monthly. Not from working, not from trading time, from capital intelligently deployed. But here's what separates good investors from everyone else. Discipline, the ability to stick with a strategy when it's boring, the patience to let compounding work, the wisdom to avoid chasing returns. I've watched countless investors destroy wealth by getting bored with 8% annual returns and reaching for 20%. They confuse volatility with opportunity. They mistake activity for progress, and they end up with less than they started with. If you're over 50, you should be past that. You should understand that wealth isn't built through home runs. It's built through consistent singles and doubles compounded over time. It's built through avoiding mistakes, not hitting jackpots. It's built through patience, discipline, and systematic execution. The third pillar is system building. This is the most powerful and the most overlooked. Most people think income requires constant effort. You work, you get paid. You stop working, the income stops. But systems generate income whether you're working or not. They're processes, structures, and assets that produce value independently of your time. I learned this building Oaktree. In the early days, every dollar we made required my direct involvement. I had to source the deal, structure the investment, monitor the position. My income was tied to my activity. But over time, we built systems. We hired analysts. We created processes. We developed frameworks. And eventually, we had a machine that could evaluate opportunities, execute investments, and generate returns without requiring my constant attention. You can do the same thing on a smaller scale. I'm watching people build digital products that sell while they sleep, online courses that teach what they know, membership communities that provide ongoing value, software tools that solve specific problems, information products that package their expertise. None of these require constant effort once they're built. They're systems that generate income independently. Let me give you a concrete example. I know a former HR executive in her late 50s who spent 30 years handling employee relations. She created an online course teaching small business owners how to handle difficult employee conversations. It took her 3 months to build. She charges $497. She sells 15 copies per month through organic content marketing. That's $7,455 monthly from a system she built once. She spends maybe 5 hours per month maintaining it. The rest of the income is passive. That's system building. You invest time up front to create something that generates income indefinitely. You trade short-term effort for long-term cash flow. You build assets instead of just earning income. Now here's how these three pillars work together. Expertise monetization generates $15,000 to $20,000 monthly from consulting or advisory work. Capital deployment generates $10,000 to $15,000 monthly from intelligent investing. System building generates $10,000 to $15,000 monthly from digital products or passive income streams. Combined, that's $35,000 to $50,000 monthly. And none of it requires you to trade time linearly. None of it requires you to show up at an office. None of it stops when you take a vacation. But here's what I need you to understand. This doesn't happen overnight. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a systematic restructuring of how you generate income. And it requires three things that most people over 50 have in abundance: patience, discipline, and experience. Patience, to build systems that take time to mature. Discipline, to stick with strategies that work even when they're boring. Experience, to recognize opportunities that others miss. If you have those three things, you can make this transition. If you don't, you'll keep trading time for money until you can't anymore. Let me address the obvious objection. You're thinking, "This sounds great, Howard, but I'm not you. I don't have your track record. I don't have your connections. I don't have your resources." And you're right, you're not me, but you don't need to be. I started with nothing. I graduated in 1969 with a degree and no money. I spent years working for other people, learning, making mistakes, building knowledge. The difference between then and now isn't my talent. It's my accumulated experience. It's the patterns I've recognized. It's the mistakes I've learned from. And if you're over 50, you have your own version of that. You have your own accumulated experience. your own recognized patterns, your own learned lessons. The question isn't whether you have enough. The question is whether you're willing to deploy what you have differently, whether you're willing to stop trading time for money and start building systems that work for you, whether you're willing to make the shift from linear income to exponential income. I see people every day who are capable of making $50,000 monthly, but are stuck making $8,000 because they won't change how they think about income. They won't let go of the salary. They won't take the risk of building something new. They won't invest the time to create systems, and they end up working until they physically can't anymore, wondering why wealth passed them by. Don't be that person. You're over 50. You've accumulated more knowledge, more experience, more wisdom than you'll ever accumulate again. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to keep trading it at an hourly rate? Or are you going to leverage it into income streams that compound? Here's what I want you to do. Take inventory of what you know, not what you do for a living, what you actually know, what problems you can solve, what questions you can answer, what value you can create. Write it down. Be specific. Be honest. Then ask yourself, who would pay for this knowledge? Not as an employee, as an advisor, as a consultant, as a teacher. Who needs what you know? What would they pay for it? How many of them exist? Then build the simplest possible version of expertise monetization. Not a fancy website, not a complex funnel, just a clear offer to solve a specific problem for a specific person at a specific price. Test it, refine it, scale it. While you're doing that, audit your capital. How much do you have? Where is it deployed? What returns is it generating? Could you do better? Almost certainly. Most people have capital sitting in savings accounts earning 0.5% when they could be earning 5 to 8% with minimal additional risk. That's not sophistication. That's just attention. And start thinking about systems. What could you build once that would generate income repeatedly? What knowledge could you package? What process could you automate? What value could you create that doesn't require your constant presence? This isn't theory. This is exactly what I've watched hundreds of people do successfully over the past 5 years. People in their 50s and 60s who were stuck in jobs they didn't love, making money they didn't need, missing opportunities they couldn't see. And then they made the shift. They restructured their income. They leveraged their knowledge. They built systems. And they created financial freedom that doesn't require them to trade time for money. The opportunity is there. The market exists. The tools are available. The only question is whether you're willing to see yourself differently. Not as an employee, not as someone who trades time for money, but as someone who deploys knowledge, capital, and systems to generate wealth. I'm 78 years old. I still work because I love what I do. But I don't work for money. Money works for me. My knowledge generates income. My capital compounds. My systems produce returns. And the freedom that creates is worth more than any salary I could earn. You can have the same thing. You just need to stop working for money and start making money work for you. That's the shift. That's the opportunity. That's what's possible if you're willing to see it.